Hey, I'm Andrew Hawnt. This is the VHS Ate My Brain podcast, and this sound is me opening a beer to accompany this podcast. So this is the first episode in a second attempt at doing a VHS Ate My Brain podcast. So thank you very much for checking this out. I hope you enjoy what is to follow. So if you are not familiar with me, I am the author of a book called VHS Ate My Brain, which came out originally in 2014, and there was a revised edition in 2023, and now the sequel is out, VHS Ate My Brain 2, The Revenge. That is out now over on Amazon, and in between those books, I was approached by Scream Horror Magazine to continue the book as a column. I thought this was a great idea, fantastic idea. I love talking about movies. I've always wanted to be in a horror magazine. I was working for Powerplay Rock and Metal magazine at the same time as well, interviewing rock stars and reviewing albums and gigs and other products, things like that, which was a load of fun. I was I was in the midst of actually the early days of my comics career, writing things like Femforce, Super Babes, Violet Shadow for AC Comics over in the States, as well as here in the UK getting work in titles such as Doctor Who Adventures for Panini and the Judge Dredd magazine for Rebellion. And I found after the first year of doing the VHS Ate My Brain column, I was finding it hard to sustain because I have a full-time job as well, family life, and health issues and so on that I need to think about. So I decided to bring that column to an end. So I stepped away from doing the VHS Ate My Brain column in Scream magazine. Scream decided to continue with the column. With different writers over the years. So that's been an interesting experience, constantly seeing it there, but not with me in it. Because I've always seen VHS Ate My Brain as my thing. And that is because of how it came to be. So on this initial episode of this second attempt at doing a VHS Ate My Brain podcast, I'm first of all going to tell you the history of this book that changed my life. Now, a lot of you will be aware of this if you have already read the book and the new sequel, The Revenge, but there may be some stuff in here that you may not be aware of. So I hope so, anyway. It's quite a personal thing. It's a strange thing because the book is not just about VHS tapes. It's about my experience growing up around rental stores and the solace I found in them, and the stuff I got out of it that was just beyond the movies. I got a lot out of that experience that was beyond just the films itself, and it's an interesting experience looking back to the mindset I was in when I put that first book together, and the stories it told of my younger years, and now with this sequel, being able to reevaluate the 10 years that have passed since the original book and this sequel. And of course the revised edition, which came out last year, which I was ever so happy about. So the original inspiration for VHS Ate My Brain all was down to a Facebook group. It was called Horror VHS Collectors Unite. You may be aware of it. It was featured a lot in a very famous VHS documentary called Adjust Your Tracking, which was made by some of the members of the group and featured a bunch of them. And if you look closely in the credits there, on that documentary, eventually in the 100 and something executive producers, you'll see my name there too. It was one of those early like Kickstarters that really took off, and when it came out, it was a revelation. I was so pleased to be involved with it, even in a tiny way like that, just by putting some money into it. And eventually, I saw it on the big screen here in Nottingham, which was crazy. A night called Straight to Video. And the Straight to Video name is something that's come up a lot in my videos on Planet Hex. It's come up in the books as well because of the dude Rob Lane, who became one of my closest friends over the last 10 years, just through the shared love of all these weird movies and tapes and, well, hair metal and a lot of very dodgy 80s hair metal, which, it's not dodgy, it's fantastic. Actually, I'm going to own that. Hair metal ruled, and there's no denying that. But I'm getting ahead of myself there a bit. So I was hugely into this Facebook group, Horror VHS Collectors Unite, and the stories that were being shared on there were amazing. People from like all over America were finding incredible hauls and rare stuff in thrift shops, and they were finding old closed down video stores and getting these enormous truckloads of tapes. And I was a little bit jealous of that, to be honest. I fully admit I was jealous of that, because over here in the UK you could find them in charity shops, all over the place. You could get them dirt cheap on eBay, but you didn't really get huge finds. Not all that often, anyway. Now, there were some English members on that group, but we were kind of few and far between. At the start, when I joined the group, we had about 800 people in it, and I think the last time I looked, it got like 16,000. It's probably got more now. It just got crazy. But it was this lovely niche that I felt very welcomed by. I'd been collecting videotapes for quite a long time, mainly because I had a really low paid job when I started collecting them. So I started picking up, well, I've always loved VHS tapes. I grew up near a video store and I spent a lot of time there. I'm from Sheffield, so in the area that I lived in was it was dangerous in the 90s. I'm sure it's only gotten more dangerous now. But when I was growing up, there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of vandalism, there were a lot of people damaging public property. And I could hear it. I could hear it out of the window, and it was giving me anxiety. I could hear things being turned over and smashed, and things were being set on fire, and there was always the police around, and there was always something terrible happening, either on our street or nearby. So I needed something to drown it all out, and I found solace in a Metro Video, which was in Malin Bridge, next to Hillsborough, next to the bottom of Hillsborough in Sheffield. There was Metro Video there, and I spent hour after hour after hour in there poring over the tapes, new releases downstairs, and the sort of not new releases, the slightly less new releases next to them, and then upstairs, the magic room with no windows, that was just a staircase up to this marvelous room of nothing but floor to ceiling VHS tapes, and I would get two for £1 there, and get a new release downstairs or a newish release, get two from the two for £1 upstairs. You got a triple bill that's going to last me all night. I would go home with Iron Brew, pink popcorn from Morrison's that you can't get anymore. Just love the pink popcorn. I don't even know what flavour it was. It was pink flavour. Maybe a pizza, something like that. And my movie nights would last all night or until I would eventually fall asleep. I've never been very good at falling asleep, never been really good at winding down. And only now in middle age, I'm now just entered my late 40s, hooray, I understand that this is because I have ADHD. I am neurodivergent and didn't know that at the time. I just thought I was weird. I didn't really understand what it was or the obstacles it would put in my way through life. But there have been many obstacles it has put in my way through life. Somehow I've got over them eventually without really understanding what was going on. But I loved going to the video store. I loved going to any video store. And I loved being able to pick up tapes from like the library where they wanted to sell them off because no one was renting weird old horror movies or ninja movies. I would go to market stores and get X rentals or occasionally pirate tapes. Come on, we all did it for a while in the 90s. And just find weird stuff, unknown weird low budget horror or forgotten movies. And I would just kind of welcome them into my collection. And that went on through my teenage years. In my 20s, I had a really low paid job, which was very, very stressful. And I found by picking up a bunch of tapes from charity shops for 25p or whatever. DVD was big, so tapes were getting cheaper and cheaper in charity shops. I could always have something new to watch and enjoy. So I kind of amassed a lot of VHS that way. And then I actively started collecting in maybe 2008, 2009, when I started finding a bunch of horror movies in the local area. I moved to a different part of Sheffield and found a wealth of them in charity shops. So I started snapping them up left, right, and centre, for 10p, 25p, 50p, occasionally £1, which seemed really expensive at the time. How times change. These things have gone very, very expensive now. So yeah, I discovered this group, absolutely fell in love with it, and wanted to give something back to the community. I saw some people were doing like fanzines, I saw some people were doing the occasional podcast, and I saw people like the marvelous Josh Schaefer doing all the Lunch Meat stuff like Lunch Meat magazine and the t-shirts and all the apparel that you can get from lunchmeatvhs.com. And I just absolutely loved it. So I set about writing a book about it. I didn't think anyone would read it. It was more for me so that I could feel part of this scene, feel part of this weird niche hobby that had completely taken me over. I was buying stuff from eBay, left, right, and centre. I was getting stuff from charity shops and second-hand stores and second-hand record shops and things like that. I would find tapes all over the place. By this time, I'd moved to Nottingham, and my God, this was a fertile hunting ground. I would find ex-rental tapes all over the place. You could get armfuls of them. You could get bags full of them. At one point, I even found in an off license that used to be a video store. I found a cage full of hundreds of ex rentals, and I went there and bought 36 of them at once. That's the biggest number I've ever bought of tapes ever, and loved it. Loved it. I must say, I did take hand sanitizer there. If you're hunting in places you're not familiar with, take some hand sanitizer. You will thank me, honestly. Whether you're after VHS, vinyl, comics, or whatever, take some hand sanitizer. It will always come in handy. I was about to put it out. I'd done a trailer for it, a book trailer, done some ads for it, and I was contacted by Josh Schaefer from Lunchmeat, who offered to do the cover again for me because my cover sucked. It was like just a VHS tape with some text over it. And Josh created a brilliant cover for me. It's the first version of it. The first version of the book came out with Josh's cover, and it said "Videovore approved" on the back. So it was, Lunchmeat were involved, and it was an awesome skull and a hand and a serpent, and it was really eye-catching with the purple and green on the cover, and he did an amazing job on it. And I do actually put it down to Josh's artwork that so many people noticed that first book. My graphic skills at the time were not great. They have vastly improved now. That is my job now, making graphics and videos and podcasts and content and copywriting and things like that. That is my day job. But at the time, I needed a helping hand, and Josh was there, and that was just the greatest thing he could have done. So the book came out, and I thought that would be it. I didn't think anyone was going to read it. Didn't think anyone was really going to interact with this a silly, relatively short book that was admittedly full of mistakes and spelling errors, which I had missed at the time. I didn't think anyone was going to read it. I didn't think anyone was going to notice it would exist. There are millions of books out there. Why would anyone want to read this thing? How wrong I was very wrong indeed. I very quickly started getting messages from all over the world, like America, Germany, Australia, Japan, all over the UK, Brazil. I got them from really unexpected places, telling me that that these people had really connected with what they'd read in VHS Ate My Brain. And while it was rough and ready, it had really stirred something in a lot of people. And I kept getting lots of messages telling me how they had great memories of being in video stores with their dad or their mum or a sibling or friends, hanging out in video stores, not just choosing movies, but hanging out for good long periods of time in them. And some people would tell me that they'd got friends or loved ones who had passed away, and reading about video stores in VHS Ate My Brain had taken them back to those times with those people in there. And that was really, really special. And that's why I made a bunch of other content, like the magazine column that I mentioned, and eventually things on YouTube, where I'm looking for tapes on eBay or Facebook or wherever I can find them digitally. And sometimes when I'm out and about looking for tapes, looking for movie stuff, I make a lot of film-related content over on Planet Hex, as I'm sure that many of you are aware. I just wanted to give something back. Again, I wanted to keep giving something back. I didn't think I would ever do a sequel to it because I didn't think I had anything else to say. I'd said it all. I'd said it all in that first book. Much to my disappointment with myself, I did. After that first book came out, I figured I'd said everything I needed. I'd done my part for the scene. I was out. So I gave up for a little bit. I actually lost interest in it and sold off most of my collection. And that really, really hurt. I have a lot of regret for that. I needed the money at the time, but looking back, I do wish I'd found other ways to get that money, because the tapes now to buy back are the prices on them have gone absolutely insane. The two that I miss the most personally are Neon Maniacs and my copy of the Video Dead. I love the Video Dead. In fact, I've got a framed Video Dead video poster on my landing wall. Sorry, on the staircase wall. As you go up, that's what you're greeted by. And I really regret selling all those things off. I had a really formidable collection that was packed with obscure gems, packed with really weird things that you wouldn't see elsewhere. And I really loved that, and I enjoyed having these things and delving into them. Watching stuff like Elves, which is not a great movie, having a back-to-back of Elves and Chopping Mall on the same night, something like that. And these are all Rex rentals that I had, and I've been able to amass them and keep them safe from being flung into landfill or just thrown in a bin. And I really, really loved them, and I miss them dearly. So by the time that the book came out, we had a baby. There was another one on the way, and I needed the space and the money. But I do really regret getting rid of certain tapes in that collection. I do look now and again to see if I can get them again, but the prices at the moment are crazy. But I stayed in touch with things over the years. I followed the magazines, I followed the YouTube channels, and joined in with the discussion, knowing that I had VHS Ate My Brain under my belt and that people had enjoyed it. And it kept selling. It kept selling. In fact, the first book was selling up until the moment that I ended its availability on Amazon, because I was going to put out the revised edition. So for the revised edition, I went over the whole text of the original book, corrected the mistakes, expanded on sections, added a lot of new content, so loads of new text, loads of images, and a catch up of what had happened. Originally, the my first thought for a sequel to VHS Ate My Brain was going to be called VHS Ate the World, on how VHS had taken over media for such a long time, but it just never materialized. So that's what I called the extra section at the back of VHS Ate My Brain Revised Edition, VHS Ate the World. That's what that section was called. That's why that came about. After the revised edition came out, I realized that there was still a market for this. There was still a hunger and an interest. I'd seen things like all the explosion in VHS channels come out on YouTube. So, of course, I carried on with my own YouTube channel, which didn't start out as just a VHS-centric channel. It started out as just general geek culture stuff during lockdown. But as time went on, I started wanting to put more and more VHS content in there, because that's what people were enjoying. Judging by my analytics, that's what people were enjoying the most. That's the things that people were watching the most. And I guess because of the book, because it was out there, people were aware that I would do that. So I figured, what the hey, and I made a bunch of VHS content, and this led to more and more messages and comments from people that they loved this stuff, that they had the great memories, they had the nostalgia factor. So once I'd done the revised edition with all the extended stuff, I thought I was done. Again, I thought I was done, but then I realized that the 10th anniversary was coming up, and a lot had happened in that 10 years, not just in terms of the collecting scene or massive nerds like myself, or VHS Mikey, or Gareth Packham over at Video Tasties, or Rob Lane and Chris Annabel at the 80s Video Shop. There was so much that had happened around the world that still mentioned VHS. Crazy stories about people being arrested in America for having a tape still out on loan. Insane stories about found footage documentaries being made with really important historical content in them. Things about people amassing videotapes for years on end that had captured so many important events and the first screenings of things. There was a documentary, was it Marion Stokes, called The Recorder? I think it was Marion Stokes, about a lady that had amassed 30 odd years of constant TV recordings. And how amazing to have such an archive like that. It's absolutely incredible. There are places that are digitizing VHS tapes to preserve things that people had filmed themselves. And that just blew my mind. So, of course, VHS Ate My Brain 2 made sense. So the impetus for that was it was a sequel. So I would write about sequels in there, good sequels, bad sequels, sequels that worked well, sequels that nearly killed their franchises. And I wanted to recap the last 10 years of VHS fandom and weird stuff that had happened, with some sprinklings of, pure nostalgia in there for video stores. Much like the first book, I wanted to include some of that sort of thing in the second one as well. So VHS Ate My Brain 2 was birthed. And yeah, it was delayed. The original release was intended in March, but I got ill in January and it knocked me sideways for quite a while. I was unwell for quite a while. And then my ankle trouble came back. I have a condition with my ankles which limits my ability to walk sometimes. Can last for like a month or so when it does flare up. It's all right at the moment, thankfully. But I had an illness and then the ankle thing, and it just completely ruined my schedule. So it ended up being a few months, delayed by a few months, just because I had to get back on track and pick things up again. But eventually it did come out on 19th of August. VHS Ate My Brain 2, The Revenge, out now on Amazon. Please do check it out. And I was pleased with it. I was really, really happy with it. And there's a lot still to come. I'm still going to put some more stuff on my Planet Hex YouTube channel about VHS and hunting and cult films and things like that. But there's some great stuff to look forward to. The main one being on the 5th of October, there is Tape Stock coming at the Tape Stock 2. Sorry, I didn't go to the first one. So Tape Stock 2 at the 80s Video Shop in Alpherton. I will be there. I'm debating whether or not to have a table there. See if I can book a little table, just like a picnic table, and sell some copies of the book and meet some people. The really good thing about these get-togethers is that you can meet fans face to face and properly shoot the shit about VHS tapes, weird movies, rental stores, the snacks that they would have, the stuff you found, the stuff you're looking for. Things like that really, really keep you going. So that's what this podcast is about. I want to talk about on this podcast going forward in future episodes about the stuff that we love, about the nostalgia, about the films, yeah, about the stores, about personal experiences. So the podcast won't always be just me on my own. I will have guests now and again when they are available, which would be brilliant because I know some really cool people, many of which I've met through the whole VHS thing. And again, like with the books, it's my way of giving something back to a community that has given me so much for not just the last decade, but far beyond that. I'm really, really grateful to everyone that has taken part in the VHS content I've put out, or sending me messages, or just reading the book. I really, really appreciate it. It's so cool to be among you, to be among people that know the joy of holding a big box X rental tape and cracking that open. So, oh, this is good condition, and flipping the top up to make sure the tape's all right. Getting excited by the trailers that are on there. God, I love trailers. I love trailers so much. There is so much to enjoy with these things. And yeah, this is a nostalgia podcast, but it's going to be more free form and less structured than my YouTube channel, which that has a certain format to keep people watching. This can be a little bit more chatty, so we'll see what happens with it anyway. So thank you for joining me for this. There's going to be a feature each week on this podcast where, after the main topic, I will talk about this week's rentals. So let's do that right now. It's time for this week's rentals. So for this week's rentals, I've chosen two. I've chosen two movies that I think would provide a very good evening's viewing. And it also says a lot about the quality of films that I like. And believe me, you ain't going to find like The Godfather or Citizen Kane or anything like that on here. So the first of these two, I've picked TerraVision. The released on Entertainment and Video, the copy I've got, the 1986, off the top of my head, I think it's 1986, horror, heavy metal comedy from the Empire movies, from Empire Entertainment, from that place that was brought to us by Charles Band, previous to bringing us Full Moon Features. So that's the company he had before Full Moon. And I love this. I love this dearly. It's I'm a sucker for anything that has 80s heavy metal in it. I'm a sucker for anything that involves Charles Band, and I'm a sucker for anything with big rubbery monsters with suckers on them and tentacles and stuff. And TerraVision is just a ridiculous film. And the further it goes into it, the more and more insane it gets. I do wholeheartedly recommend that you check out TerraVision just to see the madness. where someone's satellite TV basically invites aliens to our world. And it turns out that these killer, blobby alien monsters quite like heavy metal fans. And the people that aren't heavy metal fans meet a nasty end. So do check out TerrorVision from 1986. Make sure you put a space between Terror and Vision. Otherwise, you're just going to get the band that did Tequila and Perseverance and Oblivion. But yeah, do check out TerrorVision 1986 Empire features. The other movie in this week's weekly recommendations, it's weekly rental recommendations, can't even say that, it's got to be Caddyshack. Now, I love 80s comedies. I've read a great book in recent months called Wild and Crazy Guys that recounts all the crazy stories, ridiculous stories of the rise of people like John Belushi, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Eddie Murphy, that whole era of just, screwball comedies. I know it's a much maligned genre, the screwball comedy, but Caddyshack is one that does it particularly well. I have no interest in golf, and I'm amazed how anyone does, to be perfectly honest. I am not a sporty person, especially something like golf, but I absolutely adore this movie. So it's got Rodney Dangerfield in it being ridiculous and very Rodney Dangerfieldish. It's got Chevy Chase, Ted Knight, Michael O'Keefe, and as Carl, it's got Bill Murray waging war on a gopher. Now, for the most part, it is just like a straightforward screwball comedy, but the addition of the puppet gopher, the clearly terrible puppet gopher, just raises it up several notches, and the increasingly insane ways where Carl, Bill Murray's character, is trying to destroy the gopher, and of course, what that leads to in the finale of the movie, it just makes it surreal, more ridiculous, and thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyable. So yeah, check out TerrorVision and Caddyshack if you want a great double bill. I would recommend those as a back-to-back double bill of screwball comedy and weirdness. So weirdness and screwball comedy, that works well. So I would generally, on my double bills, triple bills, when I would go renting tapes back in the day, I would mix genres. So there'd have to be a horror movie, there'd have to be either a sci-fi or a martial arts movie next, and then they would have to finish with a comedy. That was sort of my thing there. That sort of, you would ride the crest of the wave then and end on a high note with a comedy, end up with something life-affirming and uplifting, hopefully. Even bad ones I would find entertainment in. Oh God, one bad one I've seen recently. Literally, I picked this up on DVD because I just out of completism was Class Reunion, National Lampoon's Class Reunion from 1984, and the follow-up to Animal House, and it's terrible. It's almost unbearably bad to watch, but I got through it because I'm a sucker for bad movies and good movies, and you know that's what we're here for, to enjoy these things, just to have some fun and not take things too seriously. That's what I tried anyway. But yeah, don't watch that one. Stick to Caddyshack and TerrorVision. You'll be fine with those two. So I am Andrew Hawnt. This is the VHS Ate My Brain podcast, an accompaniment to the VHS Ate My Brain 2, The Revenge, my new book, which is out now. And it's also an accompaniment to my Planet Hex YouTube channel. So if you want to see me on camera talking about this sort of thing, do go and follow me on YouTube. So it's at Andrew Hawnt, but the show is called Planet Hex. And I do a lot of VHS stuff on there, talk about comics, the writing life, cartoons, and a bunch of other things as well. But a lot of VHS tapes, a lot of cult movies. But if you want even more of that, stay right here and subscribe to the new VHS Ate My Brain podcast. Thank you for joining me for this first episode. It's good to be back.